The menu is going to change every single week. It's 4 courses, so you're going to start off with something kind of lighter, then move into, maybe a little bit heavier, maybe a fish or a soup or something like that, then get into a main protein, and then a dessert.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was looking through some of the past menus. I mean, diners could be served anything from a everything bagel tartare to beef filet with elote hash to salmon with squid and quinoa. Hey there, Omaha. Welcome into another episode of Restaurant Hoppen. I'm your host, Dan Hoppen, and back in April, I started seeing posts about something called the Underground Kitchen here in Omaha. I didn't know much about it. It just seemed like something cool was coming, and then I started seeing these photos on Facebook, and it just looked gorgeous. And that concept has now evolved into the BoHo Supper Club, which is a weekly course dinner that is held every Thursday night in the Bohemian Gardens in Little Bohemia. You might not have heard of this yet, but if you feasted on one of these meals, or if you've seen the pictures or anything, you know this thing is legit. And I had to talk to the guy who is responsible for creating these meals, and that is Chef Chris Blazeski. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it. That was a very nice background of what I seem to be doing every Thursday night, so I appreciate it very much. So a little background on the restaurant. It is in the Bohemian Gardens, as you had mentioned. It did
right
start
off 13th and Center.
Yeah, right off 13th and Center. It is a little bit hard to find, which is funny, because I explain it as the door to Narnia.
Yes!
You see a wall on the street, and then you just find a door, and it kind of is a experience all on its own. You walk into the gardens. It's pretty unbelievable. It's nothing else that you can find in Omaha, so that's great. As you had mentioned, it started as the Underground Kitchen, and then funny story, we built a little attraction on it, and then I got a nice little letter from someone in Virginia that happened to say, we use this name too, so if you could kindly get rid of it.
Seriously? It's not like the Underground Kitchen is like some super innovative name that no one else could use.
Yeah, so that was fun to deal with, but that's how we kind of came up with BoHo Supper Club. I especially, and the owners of the property, love Little Bohemia, and we want to kind of build it up together and get a name for it again, because from my understanding of when I moved here, it was a pretty popular place decades ago, and it just gets lost in translation with the growth of a city like everything else. So we're definitely trying to bring a vibrance back down there too, and we love working with other places in Little Bohemia. I go to Beercade all the time. We like Tiny House. I'm not a coffee guy, and I think Archetype's great, so that's really saying something. So it turned into this. As you had mentioned, it's every Thursday night. I change the menu every week. It's a 4-course menu. It's just kind of what I'm inspired with at that point. I'm currently building the menus for October and November. They should be out, if not today, by tomorrow. We book on talk. It's a kind of like Resi, same idea. I prefer it as to I think it kind of accentuates nicer restaurants with a little more elevated dining. That's why I wanted to end up using it. And then, it's just the quaintest little coolest experience you can ever think of. The restaurant's inside of a house that someone used to live in. As you saw, we cook in front of the guests. It's a pretty crazy experience. And we're just rolling on from here.
There is so much that you just said that I want to unpack and get into
more.
You gave a great summation of the experience and of the restaurant. One, we can just stick it to that jerk in Virginia, because I think BoHo Supper Club is a cooler name than Underground Kitchen anyway.
Yeah,
so
I
did you a
cool
favor.
Feelings about both, but now that I've settled into BoHo Supper Club, I do like it a lot.
Good. And two, I love that you described it, and I think I might have said something similar in one of my posts about our dinner at BoHo Supper Club. Because, you're just like on a street in Little Bohemia, and it's just kind of like, oh, okay, this is, a nice little downtown area. And you open up that door, and it is kind of hard to find. Like, my wife and I, we were stumbling around. We were like, do we go in here?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you open up that door, and you're just in that beautiful patio garden. You've got the Cuba room with, the outdoor bar and the drinks. And then you walk in, and it's literally like a house, and you are in the house's kitchen, and then there's just tables like 7 or 8 feet away, and you are cooking everyone's meals basically right in front of them. I've never seen anything like it in Omaha. It is just so unique.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to find anything like it either. We kind of I always say that Jeff and Craig are the owners of the property, that they stuck their foot into something good. Like, I mean, it got built. The original building is from the 1860s, and then throughout the years, a gentleman purchased it in '93 to live there, and he had this idea. It was that first building that we have the restaurant in and a parking lot, and then everything else was just his imagination. And over 31 years, this is what it's grown into, so it's pretty unbelievable. It's not something you can build. It's cool because it took that much time to put together what we get to experience now. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty unbelievable.
And we'll get more into the experience, but this is a food podcast.
Yeah, totally.
We're going to start with the food.
Yeah, 100%.
And I mean, like you mentioned, the menu is going to change every single week. It's 4 courses, so you're going to start off with something kind of lighter, then move into, maybe a little bit heavier, maybe a fish or a soup or something like that, then get into a main protein, and then a dessert.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was looking through some of the past menus. I mean, diners could be served anything from a everything bagel tartare to beef filet with elote hash to salmon with squid and quinoa. Is there, like, when you look at your cuisine and your cooking and the menus that you're creating now, is there any kind of through line or like overall direction that pulls things together, or are you just cooking things that you're interested in and you're like, that sounds really good, I'm going to try and make that?
Yeah, so especially when I try to explain it to guests, because I actually get this question pretty often. I have so many experiences in different things, whether it's classical French cooking when I went to culinary school, Italian. There's a ton of Italian places where I grew up, of course, in New Jersey. I have a Greek background, so from family with that, and modern American, to the point that I was a chef at a Southeast Asian restaurant outside of Chicago. So I have so many flavor ideas in my brain. I say that my brain is like a Rolodex of flavors, and I could just kind of put them together. A lot of menus will be influenced, whether I want to do Mediterranean that week or I want to go more towards Southeast Asian or classic French. So I'll go on a basis of what I want to do, and then I'll just throw wild things in there. For example, last night we had a toast course that had honey whipped ricotta, prosciutto, heirloom tomatoes, and chili crunch. And now chili crunch is a
chili
super.
Crunch, yes.
I mean, David Chang made that unbelievably popular, so thanks to him for that one. But normally, would that go with that Italian-inspired dish? No, but I think it just worked out incredibly well together.
So fusion is kind of one of those buzzwords in food that's so interesting, because I think when it's done really well and you are able to take 2 or maybe even 3 different food cultures and bring them together and marry them, it can be a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And just something that's wildly different that a diner hasn't experienced.
Yeah.
But you can go wrong pretty easily, too. I mean, there are some foods that are not meant to be melded together, or they require a very deft hand, and not everyone has that. How do you kind of walk that line between finding the right balance of fusion and not just mashing 2 things together that don't really make sense?
So when I was the Southeast Asian restaurant I was at was called Rock Sugar. Unfortunately, it's not around anymore, and I absolutely loved it, and I learned so much. But during my training, they taught me something that kind of opened my eyes to flavors of the world. The chef that I was training under showed me a map, and he said, "You're probably not familiar with a lot of these ingredients," which I wasn't. And then he asked me if I was familiar with Latin flavors. And I was like, well, yeah, of course. Everyone knows a lot about that. And then he said, just draw a line, a lateral line in the map, and then look where Latin America and Southeast Asian cuisines are. And it's just a direct line. So you start thinking about the temperatures and elevations and things like that. So a lot of same ingredients grow in the same place laterally on different sides of the world. And then when I realized that, I was like, oh, these flavors would make sense together. Because if they grow in the same temperature, they're probably utilized the same way. And that's how I started putting things together that people probably wouldn't think make sense. But if I look at a map in my brain, I go, well, this would make sense with this, because in different cultures, they already have the ingredient. You just need to meld them together.
That's fascinating.
It's wild.
I don't know if I've heard that before.
Yeah, I know. That kind of blew up my... I mean, I was always super interested in putting things together, but when I was told that, it was like, the skies opened up and the sun shined down upon me, and I was like, yeah, after that, it was it was just like a carnival of
Angels
fun.
started singing.
Yeah, totally, 100%.
Okay, so you gave the example from last night with the whipped ricotta and the chili crunch. Give me another example of a dish that you're really proud of, where you were able to bring two different cuisines together and just marry them in a really nice way.
Oh, so even so, for example, the dessert last night, I did a yuzu compressed pineapple, which uses Japanese citrus. You don't really find it too much around here. Thankfully, I was able to source some of it. So I explain yuzu as like sour lemon Skittles. It's kind of a crazy flavor, but it works great with pineapple because pineapple has that acidity to it as well. And then I did a cocoa nib granola. So you're going to more of the French style of desserts with cocoa nibs. They love doing it because it's really bitter, and then it just has a lighter coffee chocolate note to it. And then I finish it with a miso cream. So people are like, "What's miso?" I don't totally understand it. And you had seen that we have a chef's counter at the restaurant. So 2 guests at the chef's counter last night were curious about what miso was, and I said it's a fermented bean paste used a lot in Japanese and Asian cultures. And they were like, "Well, I don't get how it can make sense in dessert." And I said, if you taste the miso cream that I made, you won't know that there's a fermented bean paste in there. You'll just know that something's different. Something's off in a good way, and that's how I like to incorporate ingredients in dishes. I don't want it to be the star, because dishes are like a sandwich, right? You just layer them so they make sense. And then, it's just layering flavors and throwing things in there that seem kind of odd, but really texturally and flavor-wise make sense with the other food. And it's just, it's like a crazy puzzle.
Okay, so tell me how the puzzle comes together. Like, as you're putting together a 4-course menu for each week, how do you construct that thing? Like, is there a certain place where you always start? Is it just kind of, man, I saw this week and I'm inspired by that? Like, how does that process go?
So I'll usually start with the protein, and I'll base what I do after that around it. I served a pork chop last night. It was a little bit heavier. And then that's where the pineapple dish came, because it was a much lighter one. It finished really light. It's funny, our host, Jackie, she's one of the owners as well. I put the plate together, and she mentioned, well, where's the rest of it? And I said, you're going to have to trust me on this one, because it didn't look like there was much, but there was a ton of flavor going on and textures with the granola. And then after she tried everything and the guests experienced it, she was like, yeah, it's pretty perfect. So there's levels like that where, just as you had mentioned, I'll start a little bit lighter, go a little bit heavier, and then I'll end a little bit lighter at the end, because dessert's like the chef's kiss for a meal. You can do everything great, and then if the last thing you eat is bad, that's kind of what they remember. So I definitely like to build the experience up to the climax of excellence, I guess you could say, and then really send them off with something great. And the fun part there, I would say, is not only do I come up with the food. When I came to Omaha, I kind of fell into cocktails too. I became a bartender for a little while. I worked at Proof, and I learned a bunch about alcohol too. And I think the huge difference that I take pride in at the restaurant is not only do I come up with the food, I come up with the craft cocktails for the restaurant as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'm a big proponent of giving you the full experience of absolutely everything. And until my brain is tired of trying to think of 9 million things, I'll just keep doing it.
Well, you're doing a great job so
Thank
far.
you.
And I love what you said about dessert, because I'm gonna take you back a little bit. I was going through your Instagram, and you had a post, I think it was of a cake. I can't remember exactly what it was, but your caption to it was, "Not a fan of making desserts, but I sure am good at it, though."
Yeah.
I don't know if that's still the case. Maybe you like dessert. I mean, this is from years ago, so maybe you like making desserts more now. But like, what's kind of your thought process behind that? What do you think makes someone good at creating desserts?
Yeah. So from a chef's perspective, desserts are definitely different than we would call it hot food or savory food, right? There's a lot of areas to fix when you're making savory food. You taste as you go and things like that. If you had to add more salt and pepper, there's ways to get to the end result without perfection all the way through. And that's like a little trick that chefs have. Now for baking, it's totally different. It is such a science, and I never liked science class in school. And there's certain things now that I can do with dessert, now that I'm doing more, that show more my strengths for it. But yeah, baking's always going to just be like a struggle in my life. Can't be great at everything. So it's just things like that where if you mess up in the beginning, it's super frustrating at the end that you spent all this time and then it came out wrong, and there's really no way you can fix it. You got to start back right from the beginning. For example, dinner service 2 weeks ago, I had a banana cake with a banana custard that I was supposed to brulee on top. The first custard came out wrong, so then I had to make the custard again. And then our freezer on the property broke, so I couldn't freeze the custard. So, it was like on a whim kind of thing to put it together and figure it out. But the guests loved it. As far as the interpretation of myself asking them, they thought it was great. To myself, as the chef, was I very disappointed in it? Yes. But as long as you give a great service to the guests and they enjoy it, that's the important part at the end of the day.
But that's part of being a chef, right? Like if the freezer goes out, or if all of a sudden, one of your burners isn't working, or your employee calls in sick half an hour before he's supposed to show up, you don't get to tell diners, "Oh,
no,
sorry, there's the fryer's down, there's no fried food tonight," or "Oh, I have less hands, so your meal's going to take twice as long." It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You just got to figure it out and make it happen. I think when everyone thinks about being a chef, their mind goes to food first, but I think adaptability, what you just mentioned, is such a key. How did you develop that skill set?
I think I had that all my life. I've always been kind of good at looking at a situation and figuring out pretty quickly. Like you said, there's no choice. You either figure it out or they're going to know. And a big proponent of chefs is don't let them know that you're struggling. The diners don't care. You're absolutely right. Diners came for a great experience. If you're just, if your boat's sinking in the lake, you got to figure out how to keep swimming. And years and years of experience help. You'll figure out how to fix things. The stress of problems goes to ease a little bit more, I guess you could say. And then it's just the flow of service. The second you get into service, I'm usually super nervous right until I do a food show with my staff. And I'll go over the dishes with them every service, and I want them to taste it and understand it better for the guests. When I get to that, and then I know the first reservations will start strolling in around 5 o'clock, it all goes away. It's just it's motor functions of doing it for. I'm 34 now, and I've been in restaurants for 20 years, which is wild to say. So yeah, it's just I just know it now.
You get nervous every night?
Oh, yeah, there's always a little bit of nerve. Okay. If you're not nervous, that means you're not doing something, right?
Okay, yeah. No, I respect that.
Yeah.
That's true. So, like you mentioned, you've worked in all kinds of different kitchens, just to name a few. Asian, you've done fast casual, you've done Italian, you've got Greek background. And what you're doing now is a tasting menu, which is really just this. I love tasting menus because it's this beautiful progression. You're not just putting plates of food in front of somebody, but you're taking them on kind of like this journey.
Yes.
You're leading them through different flavor profiles and helping them reach that destination at the end. What draws you from all these different backgrounds that you've experienced? What draws you to that dining style?
I like being super innovative, and I will say as much as I feel the tasting menu is a new cool thing, even when I was a little kid and I'd ask to go to a nicer place for my birthday or something like that, and my parents would splurge, I hated eating this incredible menu and then wanting French fries afterwards. So as much as I love the word tasting menu, I push the proponent of you're not leaving the place hungry. Like you're getting a full meal, and that was really important to me. And I said it to the owners of the space. I was like, I want to make sure that they're satisfied, they enjoy themselves, but we give them food, because if I pay as much money as you do at some places and you get one bite of food on a plate, it just absolutely drives me crazy. I think the connotation of that is a touch negative, and I want to kind of change the narrative on it. So, changing the guest experience is a little difficult, but I like a challenge. But back to the food. As I mentioned, I kind of go back and forth on what I want to do, whether I want to pair things together, if they make sense course to course, or if just they make sense on the plate. For example, when I build a menu that has fish as a protein, I seem to throw fish in a lot in other courses on the menu. That I think for me that's kind of a fault of mine. I go, if if I'm doing fish, I just want to stay with fish. But then for last night, I don't think there was any cohesion between the 4 courses whatsoever. But I think every plate was great on its own. So I just go back and forth in my mind on whether I want it all to make sense together, or if I want to give you 4 unbelievable courses you've never had before. And I've said it to guests, it's hard doing something perfect every week. That I don't do this stuff. We're open for dinner service on Thursday. I don't touch anything until Wednesday. I've never made any of it before, which for some guests that I had conversations with, someone that you know well, Jim Laughlin, he came in and we chat with him all the time now. I think he's great. He asked for the chef to come over to the table, and I made a beet cavatelli dish with a mortadella and a pumpernickel dust on top. And he asked me how I come up with this stuff, and I was like, well, I do the menu every week. And he was like, no, but when do you do it? I was like, I made this all yesterday. I never made it before. And just I find it funny that the shock on his face that I've never made any of this stuff before. And it's just that background that I mentioned. Like, I've done it so many times, and I've worked with flavors, and my palate understands things, that it thankfully has still all worked out. Is there going to be a hiccup every once in a while? Yes. But right now, we're still working. So we'll see how it goes. I don't expect to give you the best meal you've ever had in your life every single time. But if I could be top 3 every time, I'm happy with that.
Okay. Real quick, one thing I have to comment on, because you just said something really interesting there, and I want to touch on it. But I want to affirm you in that people are not leaving hungry. Because I do think there's a little bit of a connotation with tasting menus, and some of it is earned. Because I've gone and had 7-course tasting menus where I've left, and I'm like, Sarah, should we go get ice cream?
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
I'm hungry still. We just paid $150.
Yep.
That was very much not the case
at
BoHo Supper Club. Like, again, talking about the desserts, we had a s'mores brownie that night that was fantastic. And it was like, I mean, it was a brick. It was big. And we were full, halfway through it. And we were just like, this is so good. I don't care. I bring on the calories. Like, we were very, very full that night, but in a good way.
Yeah. But
I want to get back to because what you just said is fascinating. We're recording this on September 27th. You said that you're working on the menus for October and November right now, but you won't actually prepare or test any of those dishes until the day before you serve them to diners.
I know, it sounds crazy.
What if they don't work? What if you put it together on Wednesday and you're just like, wait a second, maybe this,
There's always, I would say, so for example, for the toast that I mentioned from last night, I wanted to use speck, which is a different cured meat, right? And I couldn't source it. So I go to my background of things that I know, and I knew I could source prosciutto for it. So I'd say there's 95% of the menu stays at what it is. There's a little bit of variance that'll come in Thursday morning. I know what didn't work on Wednesday. I'll speak with Jeff, who runs floor service during the evening, and I'll explain what went wrong and what didn't went wrong. We'll tweak the menu a little bit. So it could be a touch different from what you had seen on talk when you book your reservation, but 95% of it works. And it's just that experience of doing it for so long to be able to change the 5% to where everything's where I want it to be.
That's fantastic. I don't know if that's more common in chefdom than I understand, but I'm really impressed.
If you're very good at what you do, there's always a little bit of a change that you need to find. So, and that's where the experience comes in, that the nervousness goes away and you're able to relax and know that everything works out together. But you need a few years under your belt to really know what's going on.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the dining experience.
Sure.
Because, like we mentioned, there's that garden, just that beautiful patio where you can come in and you can have a drink before, you could have a drink after if you want to. And then in the house itself, you are literally, I cannot emphasize this enough. You are in someone's home, essentially, and there's just a kitchen, and it's not like a professional, it is a professional kitchen, but it's not like a normal restaurant kitchen. It just looks like something you would see.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
In somebody's house, and then there's tables there. How does that dining experience affect a customer's meal?
So I always loved when you could see the chefs in the kitchen. It just totally changes the dining experience. That's why we decided to do the chef's counter as well, because I was like, we have the seats here. It's just something that doesn't get done that often around here, and I just wanted to really push that in there. It's kind of weird because so the way that it popped up was we did a dinner on Valentine's Day. I had worked with them last year. We do a speakeasy on Tuesdays, and then that's seasonal. So I happened to be down there in January with Jeff, and we're just talking and brainstorming. And I said, I don't have anything going on Valentine's Day. Do you want to do a dinner? And I was like, we kind of got everything already. We need some plates and chairs, and we could pull it all off. So we sold out in 36 hours. I think it was like a day and a half.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we put it up on the Instagram page for the Bohemian Gardens. 48 guests we did, and we were like, this was unbelievable. I can't believe it worked out so well. We did another one on March 7th, fully booked again. So then it turned into, we have everything. Do we just want to, start a restaurant? And Jeff had explained to someone last night how perfect it works there, because there's so many financial struggles to starting a restaurant, and it's really wearing on people. That's not what that place is. We're so busy with weddings during the wedding season on the weekends. They're almost fully booked for next year. So that's a financial comfort for them, right? So they said, this is just extra. Like, let's spend a little bit of time. It's taking a little bit longer to be busier than I want, because I know my expectations, but week by week we're a little bit busier, and they feel more comfortable with it now, and it's unbelievable that we could do these things, and they give me the creative freedom to kind of pull off what I want to pull off. We do wine bottle service, which I love. I keep bringing in nicer things week after week, because it was like we worked with what we had, and I'm like, all right, well, I'll bring in fancier wine glasses. I'm going to bring in more plateware. I just love what it's turned into, and we want to do this all year. Fortunately, it's when you do end up at the Gardens, you'll see it's mostly an outdoor space, so it's really been more seasonal. But since we do it inside the house with that incredible kitchen that we work with, we could do it all year long. So we're going to do Thursday nights all year long. When it gets a little bit cooler out, I'm working on a Friday night idea where we do 6 or 7 really cool craft cocktails, and I do more elevated small bites, and it'd be a little bit more casual. You could walk in and get a table. You don't have to automatically book a reservation with us like the restaurant where you need a reservation. So that's something we want to do too, and I hope it really rolls over and turns out great. And that'll just be something that we could do for the winter, and then when wedding season rolls back around and they're super busy and I only have my Thursday night to do the restaurant, we'll still be doing the restaurant.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are some really cool plans there. You just mentioned that the owners allow you to be as creative as you want. I mean, we're talking about, you're creating a new menu every week, so 4 new courses every week. I imagine that there is great freedom and excitement in that as a chef, because you're not making the same 8 dishes over and over and over. You're getting a chance to express yourself and try new things. But I would assume that there's also a pressure that comes along with that too, because it's like, pressure. I got to make 32 courses this month that are going to thrill diners. Like, not be average, but be awesome. Oh, and I have to be able to execute them in this tiny kitchen with only a couple hands for help.
And explain it to the staff so they know for the guests.
Yes. That's an immense amount of pressure, right?
So I was going to mention it if you didn't mention it, because it's incredibly fun to be so creative, because I've had positions where it's kind of like you follow the recipes, you teach the staff the recipes, and then you worry about the bottom line, because at the end of the day, it's a business. Here, I get to do all of it, which is great. Guests ask me how I ever copied it. No, well, not copied, but have I ever done anything again? And I was like, I haven't yet. Maybe 2 years down the line, when I'm a little creatively strained, I might do something again. But as of right now, I do something new. I have not duplicated anything, which I think is great. I love that the guests, if you come in every week, say you're there every Thursday, I just have a table for you at 6:30, right? I know you get to eat something different every week. It's a different experience every week, which is what I love. Is it difficult? It's incredibly difficult. I woke up early this morning to start working on menus because I promised myself they'd be done by Wednesday, and they're not yet. And then my girlfriend and myself are driving to Chicago after this, so I divvied off a nice dinner tonight on me if she drives the first half, so I could finish all this and I can get it up for the guests. So there's thankfully my free time and my work time meld together because I love what I do so much. So work doesn't feel like work for me. I didn't mind waking up this morning and start putting stuff together, and thankfully I'm almost done with it. When I go home, I watch food stuff. It's just immersed into my life. I never wanted to do anything else. I've always loved food. I've always wanted to open up a restaurant. Now, thankfully, like since I moved here, I fell into the alcohol side too, and I love making cocktails. I turned into a big whiskey guy, so the full experience. I'd love for this to blow up. I'd love for us to be just sold out every week to the point that a couple years down the line, all of a sudden there's you can't take away the experience of the gardens, but maybe we do something else there, and then it turns into a full brick and mortar place where you have this super cool elevated dining, and you change the menu. You change the menu every couple of weeks, and it's the same thing we're doing, just a little bit bigger scale.
Well, you're well on your way, my friend. I mean, to think that, BoHo Supper Club is essentially 6 months old. And I mean, our meal, I would put it on par or close to, some of the fine dining establishments in Omaha that, get brought up every time where it's like, oh, date night, we're going here.
Thank you.
It's right there. I got to ask you as a chef, I mean, you mentioned that you like going to restaurants that have the open kitchen concept. Yeah. And I agree with you. I think it's fascinating to watch chefs work and plate, and I mean it's so much fun. Like, I'm such a nerd. I would go to some of these places and just not even get food if I could just watch.
Yeah,
like
totally.
I'll pay you to just watch you guys because I think it's just fun. On the flip side, I feel like if I were the chef, I would hate that. I mean, because everything you're doing is in full view of everyone. Like, if you have an argument and like you can't blow up at another chef or an employee, you can't have arguments during service. Like you mentioned with that dessert the other week, the banana dessert. Like, if the ship is sinking, you still have to appear calm and in control because if you're back there running around and going crazy and stuff, the guests are going to be like, are we okay? Yeah, exactly. What's going on? What has that experience been like for you working in not just an open kitchen, but like that much of an open kitchen?
So it's growth. I would say if I did this 6 years ago, it'd probably be a very different experience because you learn how to address staff differently when you're in front of guests. You work differently when the guests can see what's going on. It's an unfortunate thing to say about the restaurant world, but some kitchens are gross. And thankfully, I've never been like that. I got trained very well. The first place I worked at, the chef's saying to me was, if you have time to lean on the table, you have time to clean my kitchen. So it's just been ingrained into my brain. And then it's just passing it off to younger staff. I have a gentleman that's a senior in high school. He's my dishwasher. His name's Isaiah. And sometimes we're a little short-staffed, and yesterday was one of those times, as you had mentioned, it happens. So thankfully he was off from school, so I shot him a text. I said, do you want to come in a little bit earlier because you might be cooking with me tonight? And he loves cooking too. He was like, yeah, totally. So he showed up earlier. He instead of the dishwashing clothes, he put the chef's coat on that we had for him downstairs, and there's certain things that he can't do yet. And I was like, if you need help, just ask me. I love doing quenelles on dessert. I think it's a really beautiful looking French football that I call it. And it didn't matter how many times he tried, he just couldn't get it. And I was like, don't worry about it. It took me 7, 8 years to get it right. Yeah. So when you need it on the dessert, just call me over and I'll do it for you. And it's just things like that. It's communicating with the staff. There are always frustrations, things in life where I hated being in front of the guests. At Rock Sugar, we had a fish dish that we deep fried the whole fish and put some vegetables over it. And the guests asked if I could take the fillet off the bone in front of them. And at that point, I was like, no, I don't. I really, really don't want to do that. I don't. Now, because week after week, like I said, you get a little bit more comfortable. Now I don't mind two guests at the chef's counter asked if I could take a picture with them last night, and they were kind of nervous about it. I was like, yeah, totally. Don't worry about it. Give me a second. Once I get this food out, I'll come around. I'll take a picture with you guys. I love chatting with the guests that sit at the chef's counter. Every once in a while, I do like to stay in the kitchen as much as possible to make sure that the guest experience is as high as I want it to be. But every once in a while, I'll roam around the dining room, chat with guests. I mean, the dining room's right there. You've been in there, so it's not like I have to go that far. Worst comes to worst, I have my eye, and I have the corner of my eye looking at what's going on.
You're 10 steps away from being back in the kitchen.
So it's never really gonna. It's not one of those things where you say, "Don't let the place burn down" because I'm not here. I'm not going that far. So there's a little bit more of a ease of idea of what's going on. So it's not bad.
I mean, you mentioned it. Cooking has been a huge part of your life. I mean, over half your life now has been spent in kitchens.
Yeah.
How'd you get into cooking originally?
My family opened a little Italian restaurant when I was about 9 months old, I believe. And they had it for like 8 years. But the story that I like to tell, because this is what was told to me when I got a little bit older, was the party room in the back of the restaurant was where my playpen was. And then when I got old enough to break out of my playpen, they always said that the kitchen was before the bar. So I got to the kitchen and then just stopped. I didn't keep going, and then it's just been like that forever. I just wanted to learn everything. I got in trouble when I was a little kid because I was watching a TV show and they were making pizza, and my grandmother was watching me because my mom was at work, and then I started making pizza dough, and she was outside apparently, and then she came in and saw this mess that I started, and I thought I was having a great time, but I got in trouble because I was making a mess in the kitchen. So it's really been my entire life. I never wanted to do anything else.
What was your first restaurant job?
My first restaurant job is still there in the little town that I grew up in Nutley, New Jersey, called Queen Margarita. I was two brothers from Naples. Before wood fire pizza and Napoli-style pizza was the big thing. They did this 20 years ago now. They shipped stones in from Italy. They built the oven in the wall, and it's still there. So pizza is one of my first loves because I learned how to make pizza from two brothers from Naples. That was one of the first things I ever learned how to do. So in the future, would you expect that I might have a nice little pizza place in this city? Yeah, there should be some high hopes for that one because I sure do love making pizza.
Man, you got big plans,
yeah,
dude.
I know.
I love it.
Yeah.
And because I think that you have different avenues that you could go to. I mean, you've talked about opening a fine dining restaurant, a pizza place.
I'd love to do a cocktail bar too. Like I really love cocktails. Yeah, there's a bunch of little niche things that I want to get done.
You got all kinds of opportunities. So how'd you end up in Omaha?
So a good friend of mine that you know, Joel Hassanali.
I knew he was going to come up in this conversation.
I got hired by him in New Jersey. It just so worked out I was working at a place, and his sous chef at the time I went to high school with, and when he was looking for people, Mike apparently had mentioned to him, he's like, you got to get this guy. He's a little older than me. He got me into food. So I did an interview with him, and the funny story, and he can verify this one because years later he finally told me, I walked into that interview like I was a hot shot, and my resume, I knew I was talented, but my resume didn't look that good. And at the time, I was asking for $19 an hour, and that was just outrageous for 10 years ago at a restaurant as a line cook. And the idea of when I left was like, who was this guy, and why is he asking for all this money? And he offered me way less than I asked for, and I had just been let go from a job that I had, so I needed to do something. And I started working there with him, and I respected what he did so much, and I started learning a lot from him for the chef side and the business side, and he was creative like I like to be. And then he ended up leaving the company, and we kept in touch, and he moved to Chicago. And I called him one day, and I was back at a pizzeria I was working at. Some friends of mine ran it, and I was like, I need a job. And they, of course, just let me come back in and do whatever. But I was like, I think, how about I just come out to Chicago and check it out? So, yeah, I flew out to Chicago. He picked me up. We went to a couple restaurants. I was fortunate enough that I wanted to go check out Alinea, which is one of the unbelievable.
Grant Atkins's place, yeah.
And the maitre d' was standing outside, and I just walked up on a whim. He was actually driving me back to the airport. I said, pull over because I see someone standing outside the restaurant. And I said, hey, I'm a big fan of Grant. I went to the same culinary school that he did. This is like culinary royalty for me. And he happened to say, oh, when did you, because it turns out the maitre d' also went to the CIA, and he graduated like 2 weeks before I started. So
Wow.
he said, we're in the middle of dinner service, but if you'd like to just quietly walk around, we could show you around the restaurant. And it wasn't a, oh, yeah, I'd love to. It was, my buddy's across the street. Would you mind him coming with me too? So we got to see the kitchen. They showed us both the dining rooms. It was unbelievable. I still can't wait to go eat there because I haven't yet. But then he dropped me off, and he was like, all right, I hope you liked it. And my answer was, yeah, you know what? I'll see you in about 2 weeks. So I just packed up all my stuff. I figured out how to find an apartment. Didn't have a job yet. He was still looking for jobs and things going on, and I just packed up my stuff and went to Chicago and figured it out together. And then I knew he was coming to Omaha. The crazy, COVID happened. That was unbelievable. So I ended up back in New Jersey for a little bit because the restaurant we were working at together closed, and I didn't have any answers on what was going on, but I kind of knew he was going to end up in Omaha already. He had some ideas of what was going to happen, and he had a job opportunity, and I was like, just call me when you're going. And it was the same thing here. I flew out, found an apartment. I'm still in the same apartment, and I haven't left. I think Omaha's great. I think Omaha's such an undervalued city. Growing up next to New York City, did you think I'd end up in Nebraska? Never in my life. As a joke, I tell people that I'm in the witness protection program, and that's how I ended up in the middle of America. But it's great here. Like the bar scene, the food scene. I think the food scene gets better month by month. I mean, it's growing. I've been to Dolomiti because, I'm a pizza guy. I checked that out. That was wild.
Those dudes are awesome.
And I say this with absolute love for my buddy Joel because he has Salted Edge now, but it's in Waterloo. So I say my favorite restaurant in Omaha, and I'm allowed to make that argument, is Avali. I can go there every night. I absolutely love that place. I always say if that place was somewhere other than Omaha, it'd be nationally known. I mean, Saffron I love. I could just go on and on and on. There's so many great places here. And do I think I'll be in Omaha forever? No. I'm a bigger city guy, but do I see myself leaving anytime soon? Absolutely not. I want to be here for a while.
So that's something I hadn't really thought about, but now that you brought it up, I want to get your opinion because you are, I'll be completely honest. I mean, I've dined in other parts of the country, but I have not spent a great amount of time outside of Omaha. So I think, yes, I think I can be objective about our food scene, but I've got some rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that. You've been in other places, especially big food cities, New York, Chicago.
I was in L.A. for a little while.
L.A.
Yeah.
So you have seen food meccas.
Yeah.
When you look at Omaha's food scene, I know you just said, you think it's great, it's evolving month by month. What are maybe some of you feel like Omaha's strong points, maybe some misses that you feel like there's an opportunity? Just when you think about Omaha's food scene, how do you describe it to friends back home or something like that?
Well, what I definitely say to my friends back home is, and a friend of mine that I've made since I lived here explained it to me, and I didn't really get it until the first winter happened. He said when it gets cold out, all people care about is just going out, getting drinks, and eating because there's nothing else to do. It's like you have the zoo and you have food and drink, and then in the winter when it's cold out, you don't have the zoo anymore, so you got food and drink. What's missing here? It's hard to say because when I'm in a different part of the country, I crave different things. When I go home, I want pizza, I want chicken parm sandwiches, I want bagels. Like every quintessential Italian-American thing you could think of because that's what I grew up on. When I'm in Chicago, I want Italian beefs. I'm going to Portillo's today. It's happening before I even get to the hotel. Like I'm getting a Italian beef and I'm getting a cake shake. That's just my thing. I mean, when I'm in LA, I was doing tacos every day. Like I didn't go to. Thankfully, I saved up and went to one fancy restaurant when I was there, but it was like street tacos. And here, I don't know if we have a thing here. It's kind of wild to say. Do you think that there's a thing here that Omaha's other than the Reuben? I know you've been on your Reuben tour, and it's wild because I had no idea Reubens were from here until I moved here.
Yeah,
zero idea. But other than Reubens, I don't know if I don't know if Omaha has something that is Omaha's known for.
I think if you ask most people, they would say steak.
Yeah.
And steakhouses.
Yeah.
I don't think I agree with that. I don't think that's Omaha's strongest
I don't think it is at all.
Honestly, I haven't given this a ton of thought. When people ask me about my favorite restaurants, the ones that I find hardest to rank, honestly, is pizza. And,
yeah, I could see that.
And I would be interested to get your take on this because you've been in places where pizza is very well known and beloved. But, like, I think we have a really good pizza game. I love Dolomiti. I could eat there 4 times a week. Dante's Pizza is fantastic. Virtuoso Pizzeria is as good as any I've had.
David's doing some good pizza.
So I guess, like, if I had to answer that question, because, I mean, my top 10 pizza, like, I would, if you asked me my top 10 pizza place in Omaha, I would wrestle with that pretty hard. So I guess that would probably be my answer in terms of, like, what I personally think we do really well. But if you ask the average Omahan, like, what's the strength of Omaha's food scene, they would not say pizza.
Yeah, I don't think so.
They would probably say steak.
And I will throw a sleeper in there because you can't see it from the street. But Brick Oven by Nebraska Furniture Mart.
Underrated.
Oh, man. I get there. I ask for a pepperoni pizza well done because I would like to say well done pizza is just how pizza should be cooked. But,
yes, agreed.
But I think that's one that you can even throw in the loop for top 10 around the city that not that many people talk about.
Zero ambiance.
Zero
service.
Absolutely
none
not.
of that, but very good food.
Oh man, pizza's great. It really makes up for the ambiance and the service because, I mean, for me, where I grew up, the pizza place has 2 or 3 tables. It's very different than here, where like Mama's has a dining room and all that stuff. It's quick service. You're used to just grabbing a pizza in a box and taking it home. So I don't need the ambiance. I don't need the service. I need it hot in the box, and I'm ready to take it home, and I'll do a movie night at my house, and I think it's great. And farther to the not fancier part, I guess you would say, of dining service. My friends back home can't believe me they just don't believe me when I tell them some of the best sushi I have is in Omaha.
Yoshitomo.
Oh my God.
Blow your mind.
Blows my mind. And they do not believe me. And I understand where they're coming from, but we got to have a little more trust in what's going on in this crazy city in the middle of America.
I don't believe myself
I know.
when I say it. And then I go there and I eat at the omakase counter. I'm just like,
oh, man.
My eyes are just rolling back in my head. David Utterback is
unbelievable.
One of the most talented individuals.
I'll say whether it's I know sometimes it's crab fat fried rice, sometimes it's shrimp fat fried rice with the salmon roe. When I go with friends, I look at the server and I say, they can order whatever they want. I'm getting a bowl of that for myself. You're going to bring 1 spoon because if anyone tries to eat that off of my plate, we're getting in a fight in the middle of the dining room.
Connie Miso. The name of that dish.
Yeah, I never remember the name. Oh, my God.
And I know because my wife is the same way. Like, if I start taking too many bites of it, she's like, hey, slow down.
Man.
And it's not like that joking slow down.
No.
She gets that look in her eyes. Yeah.
Totally. Credit where credit is due. That is one of the best things I've ever eaten in my life.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to get back to your career.
Yeah, totally.
So you talked about, kind of how this idea percolated and BoHo Supper Club came to life. But how did you get hooked up with the Bohemian Gardens originally? Because, you talked about you kind of have followed Chef Joel, but you didn't end up out at Salted Edge, which is his restaurant now. You ended up in Omaha, but you got hooked up with Bohemian Gardens. How did that relationship come to be?
Myself and Joel actually did a...
you guys did Best Bison.
We did Best Bison together, yes. I actually remember you coming in and taking a picture of the menu board, and I was like, who is this guy? You came in and got the Cuban sandwich. I totally remember that day.
Oh, my gosh, wow.
Yeah, and we did a charcuterie event there. It was like a young woman was running it, and she just asked for our help because there was a lot going on. They did like a masquerade ball with a big grazing table. So that's how Jeff met both of us. Jeff kept in touch with both of us. We did wine dinners there. Salted Edge has done wine dinners there, and they happened to build the Cuba room on the property. And he said, this was last year. He said, we're not doing anything during the week. Do you want to do something? And I brought up the idea of the speakeasy because you can't see the property from the street. And it's like I said, the door to Narnia, so it's unbelievable. So we started that last year, and it was a big hit. Super busy. Omaha places did a whole post on it, and the next week there were, no lie, about 150 people waiting outside. So the lure of it went away because everyone's trying to figure out why there's a gigantic line on 13th Street. So we did that a lot last year, and we kept in touch, and we knew we were going to do the speakeasy again this year. And then I had the opportunity of the restaurant, and like you mentioned, I know I'm not at Salted Edge, and as much as Joel wanted me to go over there with him, I was like, I have this other opportunity, and we're the same way. He was like, if you got something, go for it, and that opportunity fell into his lap too. So it's a little bit of competition now between me and him. You know, we're trying to see who can do better food. It's friendly competition. He's like family to me, so it's unbelievable that where we've started at 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, to where we are now in Omaha. It's pretty wild.
Okay, take me back to April 25th. That was your first night of dinner service. What pops to the front of your mind when you think of that night?
I was nervous. So thankfully, I'll even go back to March 7th when we did that second pop-up dinner, right?
Okay.
I remember being in the middle of dinner service, and I had mentioned this to Jeff after dinner service. I kind of looked up, and I got a little, as wild as it seems to say, it got like emotional and almost teary-eyed because I looked around, and I was like, I've wanted a restaurant my whole life. I looked around, and it hit me. I was like, excuse the language, but holy crap, I did it. I was looking around, and there was a full dining room, and it was buzzing, and I was cooking for guests, and the servers were walking around. And so that was the butterflies that went away moment. April 25th was like, okay, we've done this a couple times, and let's just get rolling. So, yeah, but that was the emotion of it. It was unbelievable, and it was like I was proud of myself and proud of what we did, and I know that it's a long road to keep going down, and it's different every week. But, you know, the angst and the craziness went away after that night. So opening night was just another night of fun, I guess I would call it.
Now, obviously, the kitchen at BoHo Supper Club is not the traditional restaurant kitchen.
No, not at all.
You've got a couple people working under you as opposed to, you know, an entire staff of 15 to 30, I guess, depending on the size of the restaurant. Mm-hmm. But this is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is your first foray into, like, leading a kitchen, right?
Yeah, like this, yes. So the biggest kitchen I've been in charge of was 26, and that was wild. That was a Southeast Asian restaurant because on a Saturday night, you had PM prep, you had 4 dishwashers. I had about 13 people cooking on the hotline, and they had 3 people in dessert. And so that was a machine, right? This is definitely different. I can get my hands on everything. I could see what they're doing. I look at every plate before it goes out. So and I kind of instill that on the service staff as well, and they're getting much better at it too. Last night they had mentioned that we were missing something on one of the dishes, and I was like, perfect. That's exactly what I want. I want you guys to know, if not as much, even more than what's going on, what I do. And there's 3 of us in the kitchen. It's not bad, but the weird part is that I don't know if I had any fried food on your menu, but I have like this little Amazon fryer that costs us $150, and I'm kind of throwing things together, and I set that at the edge of the counter, and then we have our 6 burners, and you know, I have a freezer that doesn't work that well because it's probably 25 years old, but it's fun. I build a menu around what I have available. It's not a full-blown kitchen. We got 6 burners. We got the fancy hood that I'm surprised was even there for a regular house. I got my little fryer. I got a couple fridges. I got an oven behind me. And, it's a house fridge. You saw it. We have a big old house fridge in there. There's no walk-in cooler. There's nothing like that. So I just figure it out with what I got.
It's adaptability, like you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So we've talked about some of the plans that you have for the future and just the different ways that this could go depending on the next couple months, the next year, you know, what your passion is. In the 6 or 7 months, whatever the math, I can't do it in my head fast enough, the BoHo Supper Club has been open. How have you seen it most evolve?
Well, I saw a lot of ups and downs, which was wild. Like I had mentioned, the first 2 times we were completely sold out. We were gaining a bunch of traction as the underground kitchen, right? And then we had to change everything, which was pretty crazy. So there was a stressful lull, I would say, in the end of June and all of July. And now we're starting to build a little bit more traction again. Slow nights in the middle of the summer, are that frustrated me, and busy nights that we had. Now busy nights are slow nights, which is crazy. We weren't exceptionally busy last night, but I was frustrated that we weren't more busy. If you asked me that question 2.5 months ago, I'd have been like, yeah, what we did last night was great. So there's a lot of ups and downs with it, but I think more people are knowing. There's one thing that I saw that was posted on Omaha Food Lovers that was like touched my heartstrings. Someone 2 weeks ago came in, I think it was their anniversary, if I remember correctly, and they did a bunch of stops in downtown, and the first stop was with us, and she took a video of walking through the gardens and pictures of the food. And someone had commented and said, oh, where is this? And usually, and I don't mind whatsoever, they say, oh, this is the Bohemian Gardens, but this is BoHo Supper Club. There was no idea of, and I love that they work together, and the Gardens gets things off the restaurant, and the restaurant gets things off the Gardens, but I really think that people are starting to realize, like, there's this restaurant.
It has its own identity.
It has its own identity. It's only open Thursday nights. You got to get in there. So that's what I'm really. I love exclusivity. I love people going, I can't go on Friday. I got to get there tonight. So I think traction's working a little bit better. I wake up every morning to more followers on the Instagram page, which I love to see. And I just want to, I want the city to see what they can have. That's what I'm shooting for. Like I said, I never thought Omaha was like this. Everyone outside of the Midwest, East Coast and West Coast, just thinks it's like dirt roads and corn. I mean, it's nothing like this. I'm blown away by what the city is, and I want to give my talents to the people of the city because they deserve it.
Oh, you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that much. I got 2 more questions before we get out of here that I like to ask just about every guest that comes on here. And I'm especially, I'm fascinated to hear your answers because you are a very thoughtful individual with a lot of experience in different parts of the country. First one is this. What's one thing about the restaurant industry that you think diners don't understand that you wish they did understand?
The background. So I know that they see dinner service and they have a good time, and I know they have an understanding of you after dinner service you clean and you break down, right? But most people don't know the work that gets put into it. So generally Wednesdays I'm putting in 14 hours straight. Thursdays 14 hours straight, and I don't mind it. Like I said, I love what I do, but I think as a guest understand more how much work gets put in, because you see this in front of you. You got a 11-inch dinner plate. You have a couple components on the plate, but to start from, you get your deliveries of cases and cases and cases of stuff, and breakdown to get to that plate. That's what, and I'm answering for a lot of chefs at this point, and I'll be the voice on it. That is one thing that we wish people knew more about the restaurant business, how much work actually gets put in to give you guys your dining experience.
Mm-hmm. And to get you out of here on a positive note, what's your favorite thing about being a part of the restaurant industry?
Oh, it's the thrill of it. I mean, I know you asked me earlier, do you get butterflies or things like that? I wouldn't even call it butterflies. It's like an adrenaline rush. I say it, I'll quote Shaq on this one because Shaq's a Jerseyite like myself. He got into DJing because he said it's the only thrill that he gets, like a NBA championship.
Oh, really?
And there's just this thrill of being in kitchens, and there's this buzz. And like even last night, I didn't get much sleep Wednesday night. There was just so much stuff going on, and I was just cranking through. And then by the time dinner service was done and we sit down and eat family meal together, I crashed. And that's just, it's an adrenaline rush and a buzz, and I love doing it, and that's how a lot of people are. It's like a natural Red Bull. You just keep going.
It's a natural Red Bull. I love that.
So it's the rush of the fun of the experience of dining service and seeing the guests and them enjoying what they're doing. I hate taking compliments because I'm not good at taking compliments, but I appreciate them, and I see how happy people are when they leave, and that's the positive note that I really want out of it.
Well, I'm going to make you uncomfortable then because I'm going to give you a big old compliment.
Thanks.
Chris, I had not heard of you before Underground Kitchen. And like I said, these photos just start popping up I am blown away by
Thank
the
you.
creativity and the talent that you display. And we've only had one meal at BoHo Supper Club. It will not be our last, for
Thank
sure.
you. I appreciate it.
When you mentioned that you're putting up the menus later today, I'm going to be looking at those, especially because now that we've been talking about it,
totally.
I want more. So, listeners, I can't recommend this highly enough. Like, this is an experience. It's great for a date night. It's great to just go out and, like, have a good time. It's like, oh, it's a Thursday night. What else are we going to do? Especially now that we're getting into the winter months, you eat and you drink. That's what we do here in Nebraska. So, well, I guess I'll just ask you, what's the best way? Like, you mentioned you guys are on, was it Resi or Talk?
Talk.
At Talk.
Yeah.
That's how you can sign up. But, like, what's the best way to do it? Is it to follow on social media?
Yeah,
Is it
so
to go
follow,
on the website?
I would say follow the Instagram and the Facebook page. We do have a hyperlink to Talk to book a reservation. We have it on the Bohemian Gardens and the restaurant page. You'll get more information on the BoHo Supper Club page. So I would suggest doing that. And then just follow, you know. A lot of people got my number. They can shoot me a text, find out what's going on. I don't ever mind answering. It's just, you know, it's a surprise. I'll probably post up later today that menus are available for October and November and get them before they're gone. And you know, I'll see you guys at the restaurant.
So go follow those accounts and then sign up for a meal here. You will see exactly what we're talking about and see why I'm so excited about this place. Chris, thank you for the hard work that you put into this restaurant. I can't wait to see what it evolves into. I want to taste one of your pizzas someday.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I cannot thank you enough, especially knowing that you're about to hop in a car and go to Chicago. You gave an hour to this podcast today. Thank you so much,
of course,
man.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate that I was invited on, and I was looking forward to it.
All right. Omaha, as always, thanks for eating with us.